All right, good evening and welcome to our second session of the Ultimate Winning Package and really taking a look at getting your game face on. And we are going to continue to focus on that this evening, and then we're going to take a look at it and how game face applies on the doubles court. But one of the things that I found is it's really important for each individual to know and understand their own game face, their own routine, before they even begin to think about taking that onto the doubles court or working with another person. So we're laying that foundation, and then we will dive into that kind of doubles do-si-do, as I call it, and how that works. So what I'd like to start with is just a quick review and some of the key points that I covered from the first session. And the key takeaway with this diagram right here is to understand that, confidence is this multidimensional model. And confidence is an emotion. That's what the E is on the top. It's what we feel. It's how you want to feel when you walk onto the court. The key thing here is that as human beings, we can really, with training, we can manage our emotions by controlling our behavior, our bodies, our posture, our facial expressions. That's the P on the bottom of the diagram. We also can manage our emotions by training and working on managing and controlling our thoughts and our images that happen in the brain. Okay? Now, I didn't say it was easy, but it is possible. And that's really what this diagram is to remind you of. You always have these two tools. You have your physical body and you have your mind, mental thoughts and images. And you can use those to drive any emotion that you want to feel in the moment. Even if that's not how you started, you can change it. So that's one that I want to have stay with you and to remember. That's a cornerstone one. And then I shared this little diagram, which, as I said, this runs your life. And we spent a lot of time talking about this last time and on the court, because the key is that we can train our 1 to 3 second reaction the moment the point ends. And this one talked about its stimulus response. So the stimulus is the point, or what happened in the point. And we can train our response to whatever happens on the tennis court. And our goal, our objective when we're out there, is to train ourselves to stay on the high road with our reaction in the moment. No matter what happens on that S, that stimulus, whether it's a bad call or an obnoxious opponent or a dirty look from a partner or who knows, wind, rain, anything that can happen, that we work on training our reaction and to see things from a high road perspective, that it's a challenge, that it's an opportunity, that we can handle this, we can rise up to it. That's really in the moment. That's what we're training ourselves for every time we're on the court. Okay. So that was a bit of review, and then we moved into, I asked you, whose mental game do you admire? And we looked at a couple of folks in here last week, and then I wanted to introduce you to Huey, one of your sent in the part of their homework, and I just love this. It was, Gina posted a picture of the game face that she wants to emulate, and she came up with Huey, who is her terrier. And here's the quote that she said. She said, "The reason why is because he's alert, he's happy and positive. If I throw a ball and he misses it, which isn't very often, he doesn't worry. He gets back right away, he's focused on me like a laser, and he's ready for the next throw." So I think that's, we have a lot to learn from animals. And I think Huey, whoever works for you, whose mental game do you admire? Who do you want to emulate? and taking that with you on the court and really training that first 1 to 3 second window. And as Huey says, no worries, he's back and focused on the next ball, the next point. So that sort of summarizes where we went last time. And I want to keep going and dive into the next step, 25-second in-between point management thing that we were talking about. And the next step, step 2, after you've managed your reaction in that first 1 to 3 second window, the next is to really focus on the recovery phase. And in the recovery phase, the most important thing is that you're really working towards recapturing some of the physical, mental, and emotional energy that you've just spent on the last point or the last few points. And this is one of the steps that I see so many players skip or shortchange themselves. And tennis is physically, mentally, and emotionally challenging and draining. And I too often see players take just a few seconds in between points and never really take their time and kind of recapture some energy. So what the best players in the world do is they focus on this step. And let's break it down. So the recovery step is like the 6 to 16 second period of time. In between points you have 25 seconds. And honestly, on average, I see people, if I time them, it might be 8 seconds, maybe 10. Sometimes they're just going whoot, 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 right between points. And one of the biggest things I say when I'm working with folks is to slow down, is to take your time. So we'll break down the recovery step into these 2 different areas that we've been talking about that you can manage, that you have control over. So on the physical side, it's how you're walking in your energy level as you're walking back across the court toward the baseline, to go pick up the balls. You want to find your ideal energy level. And I want to say a little bit more about that because you want to find your optimal energy number, if you will, when you're playing, like on a scale of 1 to 10. What is your optimal energy number? And I'll use myself as an example. So my number is what I came up with is a 7 on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is sort of a slug butt, kind of not moving, and 10 is you're just zinging all over the place like you've had too much caffeine that day. A 7 for me, because normally I am not a high energy person per se. Yes, I have energy when I teach and when I present, but as a tennis player, I had to learn how to walk onto the court and bring my energy level up away from my normal, because my normal is probably around a 4 or 5, and if I try to do that when I play, just no way. So my energy during points, I do everything. I move, bounce, everything that I can to keep my energy and points up around a 7. Now in recovery, I let it come down a notch or 2, maybe to a 6, no lower than a 5. So I'm slowing down a little bit, but not so far down that it's hard to reignite it. So your energy walk, as you're walking over to pick up the balls, you want to bring it down just a little bit, but keep it high enough so that it's easy to re-engage. The other thing that you see people do a lot as they are, walking back is that they look at their racket. They're staring at their strings. You can see this on a couple of pictures. They're walking, but also notice the level of the racket, that's parallel or up. It's still that strong, confident posture. And they're focused on the strings. It helps them keep their energy and their focus calm and inward and not flying around and looking all over the place, because our energy will tend to follow our eyes. So if you're constantly looking around, looking at other courts, looking at everything that's going on, you're not getting that bit of mental energy recovery. So the eyes tend to be focused on something, generally the strings, it might be the ball. And then they're also using their breath, deep, relaxing breathing to let the muscles relax, recapture some energy, and kind of calm down. And the physical part, you want to walk all the way across the baseline. Most of the time we have to do this anyway because we've got to go pick up a ball. But what I see, people who rush, They might just grab the ball from the middle of the court and then, boom, immediately move back to the baseline to serve or return and have not taken any time to kind of let the last point go. So intentionally move all the way across the baseline. And then at this time, you may see some people kind of stretch their back, their arms. Again, just getting some physical recovery. Then on the mental side, notice I only have like 1 word or 2 word phrases in that column. The mental side, what's the thoughts? What's happening up there? It's very simple. This is about recovery. You really want to let the mind relax and stay loose. It is not about analyzing the last point and how it went or fretting about the next point. Man, I see a lot of players do that, and their mind is just constantly humming and buzzing, and it's taxing, it's tiring. It will wear you out. So in the recovery, keeping it very simple in terms of words that help you stay in that feeling, whether it's just, okay, I'm going to be calm here, I need to settle down and take it easy, loose, breathe. Very, very simple mental dialogue. So the idea here is, again, physically and mentally slowing down a little bit, recapturing some energy. Okay? Then after that, you want to move into this next step, the third step of the 4 R's, which is really about now getting ready, readiness. And this comes in 2 steps. The first one is really about mentally ready and mental preparation for the next point, kind of programming the computer, if you will. And you're behind, you can see it with Sharapova up there, you're behind the baseline. And I think one of the most important things here is that you pause. I so rarely see 3-0, 4-0 players doing it. They're just rushing. But there's a moment there where you pause behind the baseline and you go through this. You still pause, you're standing there, you have that tall, confident stance. That never goes away. Your eyes are forward or down, looking at the strings. You actually stand still for a moment. And the mental preparation, the mentally getting ready, a couple things I want you to always remember. One is to register the score. I'm shocked at how many times I go watch league matches and how many times a set people are forgetting or arguing about the score. So you always want to register the score because that will dictate kind of these next 2 questions. Okay? So you're always asking these questions. They're scripted. You pause, tall, confident posture. You've got the score in your mind, and then you say, okay, what's the situation? And then you answer, what's my job? So the situation is, we're up in the game, or we are about to go into a breaker, or to my serve, or whatever, just sort of registering what's happening. And then what's my job? What's our objective? What are we going to do on this point? And having that plan, this is where you want to program the computer, program the mind, put those thoughts in there so that they have something to work on to then execute. It may be if you're serving, the plan, my job is I want to make sure I serve to the backhand, or I want to make sure I serve down the tee to keep the ball in front of my partner. I'm returning. Gosh, I'm going to use my lob on this one. I'm going to lob and I'm going to look to come in. Or one of my famous sayings is that there's a gold mine in the middle, especially in doubles. We so often try to do all these angles and all this stuff, where one of the greatest places to go is through the middle. So whatever it is, programming it into the computer, saying that, imprinting it in your brain, it takes you a huge step toward actually being able to execute that. So we've gone through, you've reacted, you've recovered some energy, you're now standing behind the baseline, you're pausing, you got that tall, confident posture, you know the score, you know the situation, and you know your job. And that takes us to the fourth step in the 4 R's, which is ritual. And this is probably the most famous of all the steps, really, in any sport. And it goes back to, it's about physical preparation. And it's all predicated on that stimulus response. So we'll take a look at some of these pictures here. Of course, that's Mr. Nadal with his unique service preparation routine. So I want to ask you this on your serve. And go ahead and throw some numbers in the chat box for me. But one of the things I want to know right off the bat is how many times do you bounce the ball on your serve? Ooh, all right. Gina knows exactly. 3. 3. Mitzi, great. Anybody want to say, well, it depends? Because up to, all right. These look like pretty solid answers. Cool. Because I do hear people say, well, Kathy, it depends. I'm like, well, no, it doesn't. You want to, if you go back to what we talked about in terms of stimulus response, and very Pavlovian, you want to train yourself on your serve, how you set your feet, whether you pick your shorts, how many times you bounce the ball, you adjust your socks. I mean, it doesn't matter. But having the same routine and being consistent with it will lead to having a consistent serve. So let's look specifically at the steps. So if I describe mine as I'm getting ready to serve, I'm very particular about my setup routine. I can see myself, I could stand up right here in my office and do it, and I'm very intentional about how I set up my left foot on the, and the right angle that I want it at, and along the baseline, where I place my right foot back behind me. Very intentional of how I set my feet up. I pause. I bounce the ball 3 times with a bit of a rhythm, kind of a little rocking rhythm in my body. And while I'm bouncing the ball with my left hand, my racket arm is loose and swings. After I'm done bouncing 3 times, and this is a sort of technical cue, but it's also part of ritual, and I think it's one of the most important things on the serve, and I think it's one of the most forgotten, if not taught, is the last thing I wrote there, which is the pause. So you bounce, and you bring your hands together before you start your service motion, and there's a momentary pause. And I think it's, for me, it's just one of the most important parts on the serve. And what I do on the pause there is I really let my hands and my arms relax and be loose. There is no little tension in my racket hand or in my tossing or what I call lifting arm. I intentionally pause. I'm loose. Now I'm really ready to serve. And that's what I want you'll see in your homework. That's what I want you to do. I want you to be able to really physically detail out your exact service ritual, almost practicing like a mime. Now, the only time it kind of depends is some people, and this is totally fine, may have a slightly different ritual on their first serve to their second serve. Not a problem, because these are 2 different serves. But you want to have the same ritual for the first or for the second so that the body is trained, and that stimulus happens, how you set your feet, how you bounce, pause. All of that stimulus adds up to the same reaction. When I watch folks change, it's literally, if you change your ritual or change the number of times you bounce or how you do things, it's literally like having 5, 6, 7 different serves. That's tough to master, getting it down to 1. So that's what's happening physically. And now mentally, you've already, in the step before, you've already done the sort of programming and planning. Now you want your mind very quiet. couple things here. One thing that I often do, and I learned this actually from Billie Jean King, and I had an opportunity to work with her once, was to visualize my target before I serve. And I will generally do that right when I pause. So I've done my feet, I've done my bounce, my arms are loose, I pause. In my mind's eye, I see exactly, if I'm going to serve down the tee, I see exactly where I want that ball to go. Okay? The only other thing I'll really say this, allow you to add on the mental side is possibly one cue if you need it. For me, sometimes if I get nervous, my cue, my reminder will be legs. When I'm loose and relaxed and I use my legs and I really get into my serve that way, it helps. But I'm not talking to myself about any other technique or reminders or any of that. I want it to be as automatic as possible. So with this, that's what I want you to set up, because the serve is so crucial in getting yourself set up for success in the point, that having and paying a lot of attention to your ritual, to your routine prior to, and really nailing it is extremely important. And if you don't have one or you haven't nailed it down to the nth degree like I was talking about, what I want you to do is I want you to go back and think about times when you were playing well and playing your best. Those are the times that you want to go back and remember and base your routine on that, because when we are playing well, we tend to naturally do the things that will help us be the most successful. Okay? So that's it on the serve, and now let's look at the return ritual. Equally as important. How you set up, how you get ready, where you set your feet, all of that is extremely important on the return of serve. And if we look at it specifically, breaking it down, it's very similar in that, okay, your setup position. Where do you stand? How far, back, behind the baseline, on the baseline, inside the baseline, closer to the double sideline, to the middle? Where do you like to stand? How wide are your feet usually? What's the angle of your legs? Where do you like to be? How are you holding your racket? What are you looking at? All of that, might seem like a lot, but it's when you're playing well, you do a particular thing, and you really want to build on that. And if you think about watching good tennis players, they do the same thing again and again and again, because they've built these rituals so that they get a similar response each and every time. Okay? Another little technical cue that I will give you here, when I work with folks on this, if you're brave, you can train this. The most recent thing that I've done is I go to my kids' game called, what is it called, Spill the Beans or something like that. It has all these little plastic beans in it. So I've taken all the beans, and when I'm working with students, I'll have them take their shoes off and put a bean inside each shoe toward the back of the heel. And then they put their shoes back on and tie them up, and then they walk a little bit. And the whole idea is to learn how to walk, to sidestep, to move without creating discomfort or pain in the heel. And what that forces them to do is to learn how to just keep the back of the heel slightly elevated. Like I could just slip my pinky finger underneath the back of your heel. That's the level and where I want your feet in this setup position, because it leads to the next step, which is about activation. You don't want to be back on your heels because you're going to be flat and you're not going to be able to move and react to a return. You want to get in a position where you just have your heels off the ground. Maybe you're moving your legs, you're swaying your arms. It's an activating type of position and return. And just so you know, to the end of that story with the beans, I actually learned, and I was trained on how to do that. The guy made us put marbles in our shoes. So I'll let you off the hook with just a little bean, but to practice it. It's a great little thing to help you kind of get that feeling. And then the last technical piece of that with the return is to kind of build in that split step. And as folks, the cue there for you is when their toss goes up in the air and they're about to go to hit, that's when you want to take your split step so that you can then move, read, and react for that. So the physical part of the return of serve is you really want to make it activating. You want to make it so that you're really ready to move. On the mental side, gosh, almost the opposite. Again, quiet mind. You're not thinking about the point or telling yourself what to do. I will often rehearse the technique, so quick little shadow swing. And what I'm focusing on there is literally little to no backswing. That's one of the keys on a return of serve. If they're serving soft, you just move in and take the ball earlier. But one of the big mistakes is taking this big sort of wind up. If they're serving hard, you don't have time. If they're serving soft, move in, take the ball early. So maybe practicing that, just kind of setting the racket to the side, no backswing. And if you have to give yourself a cue, again, it's no more than one. My cue will often be to stay down. I want to stay down and take the ball early, and that's kind of my reminder to myself on that. So we've covered the 4 R's. The 4 R's, we divided the 25 seconds that you have in between points into this 4R routine that repeats over and over and over again. And the whole idea here is that it keeps you mentally, emotionally, physically on an even keel, not going too high and too low. And what you're working on, you're going to add to is, yes, you want to have that work on your reaction, game face 80% of the time. In the 10-10 rule, 10% you get to celebrate, 10% you get to kind of pump off or blow off a little steam. Then you move into recovery. And as I said, if you look at these 4, that number 2 is often the piece that's completely missing from people's between point routine. They react, they move to barely get ready. And maybe even 3 is gone. They kind of go from react to step up to the line to serve or return. And whoa, what just happened there? So working on this, now you get 25 seconds. Most people say, oh my God, I have to do this every single time. Oh, we're going to go forever. Yes, in that I want you to use the 4 steps. Do you need to take the full 25 seconds every single time? No. But I do want you to actually go through the 4, working on your reaction. Recovery, even if it's just walking a little bit, taking a few breaths, pause for a moment, register the score, what you're going to do, and then your ritual. So it may, at minimum, I want you to take probably 12 seconds, and at maximum, you get 25. But to use the 4 steps no matter what, that's how important they are. That's what separates the best players at any level from the next group. So we've gone through again the 4 R's, what I call them. They're their in the moment game face routine. And how I work with folks, I want you to have tools that you can use immediately, instantly on the court. We will talk about some other things and that you can train off of, but what I like about this approach is it will give you immediate results and immediate improvement. Just working on number 1, just getting your reaction under control can make a huge difference. So we will be adding to it, but I wanted to make sure that you have something that, gosh, you go out tomorrow, you're practicing, you got a match, boom, I can work on this right away and get results. Okay. Now your job is to nail your game face routine. What works for you in these 4 steps? And as you get that down, what I want to do next is introduce it in this world of doubles. And how do these 4 R's, how does this work when you now add another person to the equation and you're out on the court. How do we do this? How do we work together to make this happen? And that's really what the best teams do. So I have a question for you. When you take a look at this image, does this look or feel familiar to you? Yeah. You know, have you ever seen this out there when you've been playing or experienced this on the doubles court? Yeah. A little bit. Everybody's chiming in. Yeah. A little bit too often. Well, this is the exciting part for me, because this is where tennis becomes, it's doubles. Doubles is a team sport. I absolutely love it. I love having that interaction and that energy with another person on the court. For me, singles was much more of a struggle. I'm out there by myself, and if I start going down this dark hole, I didn't really have anybody to turn to, and I fell in love with doubles. And we talk about this, we talk about emotions, and if you think about emotions as energy in motion, right? You can look at this picture and see, okay, the energy in this picture is probably kind of down to the ground, low waves of energy, versus this picture. Totally different emotion, totally different energy in motion. And that's really what we're trying to train. And they call it team chemistry for a good reason. There is chemistry between you and your partner. And we're striving for this and really wanting to avoid this one. How do we keep the energy high and avoid this? So let's dive in and look at doubles. So for me as a coach, working at all levels with different doubles teams, from high school, top collegiate, some at the U.S. Open, leagues, it doesn't matter. I see this way too often. Partners moving in, you can call it parallel lines or parallel lives. Like two ships passing in the night. I mean, you'd be like, hello, do you even see that other person over there? Have you noticed them? And it really starts to resemble kind of playing singles on the doubles court. And it's just so frustrating to me, because you're missing out on, to me, one of the greatest things is to play doubles, to click with another partner, and have, win or lose, having that connection and that fun. It's just, as you can tell, I get really excited about it. So this is what I see far too often. And what cracks me up is even some of the people I've taught this next piece to, and I go out and watch them, it's probably the first time they go out, it might be they're still doing this about 60% of the time. But they think, it's like, oh, no, we weren't doing that. I'm like, yes, you were. So what changed all of this for me as a coach and for us at Cal was this little diagram. And again, it was my mentor, Dr. Lair, and early in his work. We were Jan Brogan and I were at a coaches convention for college coaches, and Dr. Lair was there. He's always a great presenter. And he put threw this little diagram up, and didn't spend much time on it, didn't say much about it, but said, oh yeah, when I've been studying this whole between point management, and I watched some doubles, this is kind of what it looks like. Well, geez, for me and for Jan Brogan, this was like the biggest light bulb, and it absolutely changed our coaching, how we do doubles, and we introduced the X factor, because we had teams, good players, but too often they were looking like this on the court. The energy wasn't there. The emotion wasn't there. Sure, the physical talent was, but that in doubles, it's a whole other ball of wax. So once we learned this and how people move on the court, that what happens, the best players, so if we look at this is S is for server, and SP is for server's partner. So the blue lines, let's just think I personally like it when the point ends with both players at the net. So if we move S up there, and S and P and S are both up at net, this is going to right across from one another. What Dr. Laird discovered, this X factor, is that they move together back toward the baseline. Their paths, they actually sort of cross. They meet in the back, and then they go to their next position. And their movement patterns started to form this X. So if we overlay and insert the 4 R's on here, this is where the pieces happened. So up toward the net is the reaction. So if we look at the Bryan brothers here, that you see some version of this a lot. They come together, they do the fist pump, or they're pumping their own individual fists. That's happening up near the net. They now will walk together for recovery. And the thing I want to point out about this is notice that Leander Paes and Cara Black, they're walking together as a united front, sort of shoulder to shoulder. Notice their rackets heads are either parallel or slightly up, never hanging down. Okay. But what's interesting about this is it's still sort of individual time. They're not really talking. They're not really chatting. This is their recovery for each person individually. Okay? They're both getting their physical, mental, and emotional energy, but they're just moving together as a united front and letting the energy between them help. So that's where they're in here. They're now walking, back together. Now they're together here. They're going to be all the way back here behind the baseline, and they're going to move into the get ready phase. And in the get ready phase, they're behind the baseline. And one thing I'll talk about doubles, and some of our doubles teams, they would often find their own, as a team, kind of their own, magic spot, if you call it, where they would always sort of stop behind the baseline and plan. So this is where we're really now looking at one another, we're talking to one another, we're strategizing, and we're doing the same thing. Okay, what's the score? Yep, we're up 40-15. Okay, what's our job? What's our objective? What are we trying to do this point? So the gal, Amy, that's on the right is probably serving. So, all right, I'm going to serve down the tee. We want you to, I'm going to keep the ball in front of you. I want you to look to go and go behind the person. So they're there planning and talking and keeping their conversation based on tactics and what they're going to do. Okay? So that's happening back here. And then the server will come over here and take their position. And then there's a cute little, not cute, but just kind of important little piece to have the server's partner, instead of just sort of lumbering slowly up to her position, one of the things is kind of a little hop and just a slight jog up to position so that your energy level is now getting up and you're getting ready to start the next point. Okay? And then finally, the last piece, again, we're back to our individual time. The server's working on their service ritual. The receiver is working on their ritual. Okay? So we work this this is why I kind of call it the doubles do-si-do. It's like, how are we moving together? We have our own individual reaction. We're still working on that, whatever works for you. We're moving together as a united front, going through our recovery phase. We're going to pause as a team and as a unit behind the baseline, right, and take a moment and register the score and agree on our objective and what we're trying to do. Okay? And then we go our separate ways with good energy, and we go up to our position for the next point. And it's the same type of thing that's happening on the other side for receiver and receiver's partner. No parallel lines, always coming together. Okay? And so for you, really working on your ritual, we've talked about serve, we've talked about return, but also having your ritual when you are server's partner and when you are receiver's partner. Probably fairly similar to what you do on the return of serve. So that's how you bring this in on the doubles court. But the absolute key to this is that you, as an individual player, have to nail your game face routine. When you do that, and now you meet up with another person and you've got your stuff managed, it's much easier to play with any partner. And the more you get your stuff handled and under control and can kind of manage your emotions on the court, you're going to be that player that pretty much everybody wants to play with, or anyone can play with. Okay? So a couple questions that I always get about this in terms of doubles. Like, oh my God, Kath, again we have to do this between every single point? Ideally, yes. Now, again, even in doubles, it doesn't have to take 25 seconds. It can be less. You can move it a little bit quicker. Okay? But you don't want to skip a step. And on the receiving side, it could be a quick meet in the middle. At minimum, absolute minimum, what I want is at least eye contact between partners, between points. I can't tell you how many times, like, oh my God, you just played a point and you never look at each other? Like, are you kidding me? You want to congratulate, reassure, energy, thumbs up. You want to have some energetic connection between you every single time. And it's just the greatest. That's what makes it a team sport. That's what changes the whole dynamic and makes it, to me, a lot more fun. So and then the other question I get was, what if my partner doesn't do this? It is a challenge. You want to make sure you maintain it. And this is something, I'm working with a couple of teams right now from the 40 plus, and it was fun because I taught this to the whole team. And that was one of my premises, was if the whole team knows this, then it doesn't really matter kind of who you play with. Because oftentimes the complaining about playing with a different partner really rarely has to do with ability, but has to do more with attitude and reaction and all that other kind of stuff. So we get a team who's working on this as a team, you really can change partners and know that this is just how we do it here. We work on these things. So if you have a partner who isn't doing it, you definitely want to do your best to introduce it. If they're not into it, at least no excuses. You want to maintain what you do and how you manage this every single time, regardless of what she's doing. Okay? All right. So we put that together. We've gone through the 4 steps. We've kind of put that into doubles. I want to talk about a couple things that can impact the 4 R's. This first one, coaching style or philosophy. It could also be, a team captain or just being on a team. Some people don't want to do this. Some people could care less. It's like whatever. It will help you as an individual. Okay? So even if they're not doing it, you stick to it. It will help you and your playing ability. For sure, the doubles knowledge and level of players that are on your team. Sometimes for people, if they're new, they're just trying to worry about how to get their serve in. But the more, if you can kind of guide it and guide them, it helps them calm down and it helps them play better. And then, yes, personalities. Personalities are a huge issue. And using these 4 R's in doubles, though, definitely can alleviate some of those issues. So if you're fiery and you end up playing with another fiery person, at least having this routine can help kind of channel that energy and make a difference. So I want to give you some tools, some things that I've used as a coach that I suggest you can kind of dive into and add to your toolbox as well that can help with this. And I'm just going to make a small plug. The handsome gentleman holding up that trophy is my godson, Travis Parrott. who won the, I think it was 2009 U.S. Open mixed doubles champion, and that's Carly Gullickson. And I'm going to take just a tiny bit of credit because I definitely have coached him and worked with him over the years, and he was definitely an early guinea pig in all of my game face work. And the funny story about them, I mean, talk about playing with different partners. The story here is that Travis Parrott was going to actually play with someone else in the Open, and they were in the main draw. And she called him, this other gal called him about a week prior to the event and saying, hey, you know, sorry, not going to be able to do it. She basically dumped him to play with somebody else. So here's poor Travis, doesn't have a partner, but his ranking's high enough he can get in. So this gal who dumped him said, oh, call Carly. You know, she's probably available. Well, Travis didn't know Carly, had never met, and but calls her up. So they'd never met, never played together. They get in as the wild card to the U.S. Open mixed doubles because they didn't have the ranking. They go through the entire draw. They do not drop a set. They beat established teams like the one I showed you before, Leander Paes and Cara Black. I mean, it was unbelievable. And the energy and the chemistry that they had and brought together. And, you know, Travis knows this stuff about how to be that kind of partner and the energy level in between points. And it was so much fun. So that's my little testimonial to it. So some tools that you can use if you do work with or play with a partner on a regular basis, or even members of your team, you know, having a shared vision is really important. If you're on a team going into this league season, what's the vision for the team? What are people up to? What are they trying to accomplish? Do people want to go to postseason play? Is it just for fun and to get some matches? And then having that with a couple of the folks that you play doubles with. You know, what are we up to? What are we trying to achieve? Where do we want to go? Do we want to move up in the lineup? Is it postseason? What are we trying to do? It makes so much sense and way more empowering if you have a shared vision. And then partner agreements. Again, if it's somebody that you play with regularly or often, having some basic agreements, whether or not, one, we're going to use this game face routine and how we're going to work together in between points can be a basic agreement. You can talk about how, you know, kind of one of the things that we often did at Cal was whoever was serving was kind of more the general for that game, kind of deciding where they were going to serve, whether they were going to come in, whether they were going to do two back or up or whatever. And then whoever is the better, you know, returner, or is just the returner on that particular point, can be the general on the other side. So just how do we do this? And then I would also add, and this is something I did with a couple of teams that I've been working with, there should just some basic, what I call them, you know, parameters about, okay, who plays the, you know, who takes the middle ball? Is it the old cliche that the forehand takes the middle? Is it the person who's closer to the net? Who's in charge? How do you split the court? Some people, you know, split the court right down the middle from, you know, ad side to deuce side. And I have the ad side. Anything over here is mine. You have the deuce side. Anything over there is yours. That's one way to do it. We tend to split it front and back. So if I'm up at net and my partner's back, I'm in charge. I'm up at net, and I have free reign to go for any ball and try to pick off anything that I can and to be aggressive. And if I go for it and don't make it, she's got to clean up behind me. You know, if she doesn't want that job, then she better come into net, and then, you know, then it's like who's closer to the net in positioning has more control. But just some basic kind of agreements can be very helpful on a team or with a partner. The other thing that I would suggest is video. You know, video, if you're playing a team match, maybe somebody's there, they're not in, is to have your match videotaped. And more importantly, to spend time taking a look at what happens in between points. What is our body language like? Are we keeping our game face on? How supportive am I being? And really dig into it and see what happens. Gosh, let's time this. How much time am I taking, or how much time are we taking as a team? Are we two ships? Do we actually cross? I mean, what's happening? Is it so? Again, I've gone out and I've done some charting and I've done some match analysis, and it's incredible when I talk to folks as they come off the court. What they perceive to have happened or what they're like is so different from what I see. Because oftentimes when you're in the middle of it, you really have the worst seat in the house to see how you're behaving, how you're reacting, and what happened. And video and it's so easy now. I mean, somebody can stand there with their phone and capture some of it, and it's just a great learning tool. The other piece, kind of along those lines, is post-match analysis. Not just about what you technically did well, tactically, but how did we do on this whole game face? How was our energy? How were we supportive of one another in our communication? And how's that working? And making that part of the partnership or making that part of your team is huge. And the piece that I will say about this is one of the things I notice is that people, excuse the expression, but they'll bitch and complain, but they'll never talk about it. So working it out and kind of having some agreements and then checking in on it or agreeing to use game face and then getting feedback really, really helps. And then, of course, practice. Practicing this kind of game face routine, the in-between point management at practice is key. That it doesn't just happen at match day, but it happens when you're drilling, when you're taking a lesson, it happens when you're playing practice sets. The more you can do that and ingrain that into your routine, the more natural it will become. Cool. So there was a fire hose of information. So any questions before I go in and talk about the homework? So to recap, we went through all the 4 R's. We talked about and reviewed reaction. We talked about how important recovery is and using your time in between points. Talked about how important it is to get ready, sort of mentally ready. And then physical rituals and routines on your serve and on return. Okay? And your job is to master that as an individual. And then we brought it over to the doubles court and tried to overlay those 4 steps to what you can do and how you can be on the doubles court. Okay? So that was today's conversation, and that's a lot of your homework is to go out and really work on this and practice this and bring it to the court and see how it goes. All right, so I want to go over the homework assignment that's in your action plan. Know thy doubles self, kind of an important place to start. And often when you think about it, when you go out to play and you're playing with a new doubles partner, invariably the most common question is, well, what side do you play? Not a bad question. It's definitely an important one. I'd like you to add 2 questions, and it's on your homework sheet. The first one is to think about for yourself, what is it that you like to hear from your doubles partner before and during a match? So you need to write that out for yourself. What is it that I personally like to hear? What helps me? And then that's a question that you ask your partner. So, okay, Nancy and I are going to play, and I said, all right, Nancy, what side do you usually play? All right, she wants to play ad, no problem, I'll play deuce. Easy. So Nancy, let me ask you this. What is it that you really like to hear from your doubles partner when we're on the court? What helps you? And then she'll let me know. Cool. Now my second question, Nancy, is what is it that you never want to hear from me or from your doubles partner on a match, during a match? And be honest. I mean, because it's so, you can be on any end of the spectrum. I have some players that want their partner to coach them. I have some that are like, oh my God, if she does not stop telling me what to do, I'm going to pull my hair out. So do you have permission? Do you want somebody who's more the cheerleader, like, come on, it's okay, you can do this, right back? Or do you want someone occasionally to kind of get on you, like, come on, Lynn, let's go. You got more in you than that. Here we go, right back. What is the style? What helps? And having that conversation. And then you providing that for them, and then ideally being able to have that so you can provide it for each other. Okay? And remember, when you use the model, there's not a lot of dialogue happening between partners. You have your reaction, there might be a quick high five, yeah, awesome, way to go. You're working on recovery. You might have just a moment in there when you're getting ready to kind of help pump up or relax or whatever, but the focus is mostly on the game plan. Okay? So those, I think, are magical questions in addition to what side you play. What is it that you like to hear? What is it that you never want to hear? Very powerful stuff. Okay? Then the next piece I want you to go through and to really think about is, who's your favorite person to play doubles with and why? What is it that you like? What does he or she bring to the court that just makes it, oh my God, I look forward to playing with them all the time? Some of you, I don't know if you know this gal, but some of them, like I used to, I was an assistant pro for a while at Harbor Bay when Rosie Bariz was there. And oh my, she's now at Claremont. Awesome. I loved playing doubles with her. Again, I'm the one who gets a little bit nervous and can kind of freak out. Well, Rosie is just, energizer, positive bunny. She would just not let me go anywhere near letting my energy level drop or getting on myself. She was just, I learned a ton. And she's someone for me that I want to emulate. And when I go out on the court, I want to be that person. I saw how awesome it is. So who is that person for you and why? And then what is it that you're going to add to your doubles toolkit so that you're going to be that kind of partner that everyone wants to play with? What are you going to bring to the party? That, I think, is the most powerful thing I can leave you with on all of this, is not to rely and look toward your partner, but you be the person, you be the energy, you be that. It is, either way, the energy on the court can be contagious. So if someone's coming out and their energy's low or Eeyore-like or whatever, you can't let that infect you. You got to come out, no matter what, with that game face on, with your routine on, and just stick to it, stick to it, stick to it. And it will change theirs. And so that's really what I want you to work on, is to get and nail down your game face routine and your game face routine on the doubles court. Okay? So that is the content that I have for this evening. So if anybody has any questions, jump on to that chat box and fire away. And as a reminder, I had a couple of folks email me during the week. I absolutely love it. I don't mind at all if things come up. You've got particular things that you want me to address in the classes, please let me know. I'm here for you and really want to make this the most powerful for you. And I really want you to do that this week, because our next call is Q&A. It's all question and answer. And I will send you the directions, because I may do this. This is webinar software. We may just get on a conference call line and do it differently, because I want to talk. I'm sitting here, it's weird to just talk to yourself. I'd rather get you guys on the phone and we can have your questions ahead of time or put you in the queue and we can have a conversation. So please, please, please. All right. Well, if you won't be able to make it live, one thing that would be helpful is still send me your questions, and I will address them, and then you'll have them on the recording. And again, if something else comes up that maybe I didn't address or is really there, email me. And I don't mind. I honestly don't mind either responding by email or setting up like a 10-minute call or whatever where we can chat. It's completely fine. That's what I want to do and be available for everybody. This course is for you and about you, so I'm very flexible on all of that. So, all right. Well, Lynn, and Lynn, when you go out and try this tomorrow, let me know. I'd love to hear how things are going, or if you need help, or all of that. Please consider me your coach in all of this. I would love it. All righty. Well, if there's no questions now, I'm sure there will be once you get out there and start playing with this stuff. So you can email them to me, and I will collect them and see how. So, all right. So, Lynn, you tried the reaction phase today. How did it go? See? Very effective, she says. Absolutely. I mean, it is the cornerstone to having a strong mental game on the court, off the court. It's the thing that some of you know that I also teach for Positive Coaching Alliance, and I basically teach adults how to behave at youth sporting events. So I do a lot of workshops for coaches and parents, and I never let a workshop go by where I don't teach that reaction control, because I want coaches to have it nailed and I want parents to have it nailed, because that's how our kids learn how to have strong mental skills. So awesome. Fired up. You did it in my boot camp class. I used to be the biggest whiner. Yay! Awesome. It is going to help you so much. And when you think about the physiology and the energy of whining and complaining and really what you're pumping into your bloodstream, it just makes working out so much harder. So yes, the chemistry and chemicals of more positive optimism challenge are what's going to fuel you to have greater results from a workout. So awesome. Yes, reaction control does not allow time for whining. Absolutely. Awesome. Well, I am going to make sure it happens next week that we can get on the phone, because I like energy from people, and I want to hear some voices and have some conversations so that we can rock it that way. So, ladies, thank you very much. Awesome. As always, you have my email. Keep me in the loop, and I look forward to chatting with all of you or most of you next week. And if you can't make it, like I said, I'll address your questions, and I'm even willing to set up a brief one-on-one phone call if need be. So thank you all. Have a great evening, and I will talk to you next week. Take care.